In terms of developing a great mobile experience for users, there's three key principles. We have to have the right content, we have to ensure that the design and functionality suits that user on the go, and the second, and the area that we'll be focusing on, is performance and speed. So, whether you're offline or online, no one likes to wait. And when we don't have a good mobile speed, we're asking our users, our readers, to wait in line. And often, our users won't. Performance is the art of measuring experience, and it begins with page load speed. This is an important principle for all companies, even those as big as Wikipedia, who look at their speed at the millisecond. It's something that all the big tech industry businesses are looking at as well. So here in Google, we know that a 2% slower page speed on our search results results in 2% fewer searches. Fathead, for example, another big publisher in America, when they improved their mobile speed by 35%, they saw a 70% increase in mobile revenue per user. Speed matters. But what is speed? So, when we talk about mobile speed, it's not just about how quickly that we can get that information onto the screen. What also is important is the perception of speed. So when a user is using their mobile device, there's certain things they can allow for. When we take in consideration how we process information, a user can tolerate a 1 second page speed. Users feel in control of the mobile web experience, and this sense of control continues unless there's anything that fails on that journey. However, at 10 seconds, visitors' attention is barely kept. The sensation of impatience, frustration, and feeling of being totally abandoned becomes more prevalent, and a lot of times users will leave, never to come back. So how do users feel and react to speed? As I mentioned just there, between 1 to 2 seconds is the sweet spot. The user feels good, they know the content is coming, and they're happy to continue browsing on the page. When we achieve speeds like this, we see increases in metrics such as time spent on site, page views, and we also see decreases in metrics such as bounce rate. However, speeds of 1 to 2 seconds may not be possible for all publishers or all websites. It begins to tier up. So between 3 to 6 seconds, users can tolerate. They're not overtly happy, but they're okay with it. As we move up to 7 to 10 seconds, unless that user has strong loyalty to that website, they're likely to leave. After 10 seconds, they've left your website. This is an interesting graph to look at that perception on speed on the user's interaction on your site. If we look at the green line, this is conversion rate, which is more related to e-commerce websites. And then the red line is bounce rate, which is relevant to both publishers and e-commerce clients alike. On the x-axis, you can see this is the load time in seconds, how long it takes for that page to render within their mobile browser. And then on the y-axis, we have the percentage rate against bounce rate, particularly on the red line that we see there. You'll notice that at the beginning of the curve there, we have incredibly high bounce rates, even when the page speed is incredibly quick. This is more likely due to be caused by error pages. So those pages load up very, very quickly for the user, but it's obviously not what they want to see. However, you'll see that the performance in terms of bounce rate begins to increase when we hit around 2 to 3 seconds. From that point onwards, though, we see a dramatic increase on the bounce rate. So where we're getting bounce rates of 12.8% around 2.5 seconds, this scales all the way up to 60% when we make our user wait up to 10 seconds. So what do users dislike the most when they're browsing the web on their mobile devices? So recently Google did a poll, and almost half of those people who responded to the poll responded by saying that waiting for slow pages to lead was their number one dislike on the web. The competition to capture attention on mobile web pages is even more intense when we consider that users have a plethora of different sources that they can go to consume that content. On average, 3 in 4 people will abandon a mobile website if it takes longer than 5 seconds to load. So it's something we really need to focus in on. There's other areas of concern on mobile devices, such as poor unplayable videos, being redirected to the wrong page, intrusive ads, but number one is slow pages. Here in Google, we obviously care a lot about the user's experience, and page speed is one of the ranking signals that we have as of last year. So getting it right from a page speed perspective is not only good for the user who gets to consume the content in a way that they feel is appropriate, it's also good for you as a publisher as you get rewarded from Google in terms of those ranking signals as well. So this is a quote from Amazon. Amazon is a great company in terms of taking latency seriously. They found that 100 milliseconds in incremental latency led to a 1% hit in profits. I like this quote from Amazon's CEO. You don't get to where it needs to be without a lot of pain. Let me give you the pain up front. Your target for latency is 1 second. So getting our page speeds right is something that we should be prioritizing above all else when we're looking at the mobile world. So, we've talked about the importance of mobile. What can we do? Well, the first thing is to look at as a framework. When users are looking at your content on their mobile browser, we have to consider it as a conversation. First of all, we need to grab their attention. We have to keep them engaged, and then we also have to present them with choices. The first thing we should be focusing on is that load signal. We have to let the user know that the website is ready to load and knows that they're there. The second thing we have to very quickly deliver to that user is a message to let them know that the website that they want to view is present. After that, we want to load content as quickly as possible to that user so that they don't bounce from the website. And after that, we can look to loading above the fold features such as our ads once they've become engaged and know that they're on a mobile website that is responding to their needs. So, how fast is your site? One of the quickest and easiest ways for you to judge the performance of your mobile website is by using the Page Speed Insights tool. From there, you'll be able to judge how quickly the page is loading for your user. One thing to note, when you're reviewing your mobile speeds, check a couple of your pages. Typically for publishers, the home page will load the quickest. And then after that, the article pages will load significantly slower due to the fact that ad technologies and other widgets are slowing down the performance. The next thing I want to look at here is just a video to show you how page loads and how we should be communicating to the user. So when we look over to the left hand side, we can see adp.com's website. The first thing they did was load their first load signal to indicate to the user that the website was loading. We can see page checks at that stage now as well. Then they loaded up a hero text, which was their primary message for the user. And then after that, they loaded up a call to action, and the first impression was complete. Now, when we look at those 4 websites, within the first 8 seconds, ADP was able to load up their content significantly quicker than surepayroll.com. Not only did they load their content quicker, they loaded in a way that would be more useful to the user. They focused on that conversation and that communication with the user. The next thing we'll be looking at is how we can improve that performance on MWeb. When we're looking to load up pages for our users, we have to consider that conversation that we discussed just moments ago, and also how it makes sense for you as a business. So once you've started that conversation with the user, the next element that we may want to look at is how do we deliver the right ad content to them. When we delay the ad content to the user, we decrease the viewability on that page, and this can have a significant decrease in our revenues, particularly on MWeb. A couple of things that we want to be considering when we consider optimization on MWeb. First of all, the page speed modules. So page speed modules are an open source server module that you can utilize to optimize your site automatically. What we found with page speed modules is that it can increase your PSI score by 6 points and save users 17% of image data every time they visit your site. The key areas that the page speed modules will help optimize and automize for you as well is they will leverage browser caching on your behalf. They will also look to eliminate render blocking JavaScript and CSS in above the fold content. This is important because the above the fold content is typically the first thing your user will see on the page. We'd strongly advise you to look at the page speed modules as a quick and easy way for you to optimize your MWeb performance. The second area that we want to look at is the framework for delivering that content to the user. So when we talk about that, we talk about the flow methodology, which stands for first impression matter, limit server hits, and optimize the content delivery. We'll go through this in a lot more detail over the next couple of slides. But from the first impression matters, what we're really talking about is how do we prioritize the download of engagement content. When a user comes to that website, what is the most important thing that they need to see? In terms of limiting the server hits, typically we want to only have around 40 requests go into our server at any one time. Now, this is a best practice and may not suit every publisher, but some ways that we can limit the server hits is by concatenation and leveraging browser caching. The other area that we can look to focus and optimize on the MWeb is optimizing our content delivery, and that's going to involve minimizing the content that we have through using gzip. As I said, first impression matters. Getting that conversation started with your user is incredibly important on MWeb. So, what can we do that will have a direct impact on the performance on MWeb? One thing we would recommend is for you to download and prioritize the engagement content. So what we really want to do is render lightweight text and internal inline CSS first. Then when we think about our conversation with our user, try and prioritize the hero image and the hero text that you want to display to them before you present them your assets. So whether those assets are images, external CSS, or JavaScript, do consider what the user will see when they first arrive onto your website. Also consider using lower quality images to download faster and swap it in with a higher quality image later on. The next area that we can look to focus on is the progressively loading of anticipated data. So after we've downloaded critical content, what we want to try and do is download assets and render the content in a way that the user will likely access. So when we're considering this, we look at two key areas on your page: above the fold and below the fold. So for above the fold, we want to remove as much non-critical content as possible. If there's extra features such as live chat, we would look to remove that from above the fold. We'd also suggest that we use swappable content, e.g. custom fonts and higher quality images. When we consider below the fold, we would expect the mobile site to have loaded up at this point. Content below the fold should include Java and CSS files that don't assist in that first impression, and for Java use asynchronously. We also would look to using different frameworks and analytics and 3P pixels. Next, let's talk about reducing the server hits. So what we want to try and do is limit server hits as much as possible. As we mentioned earlier, network connectivity is limiting, and server request overhead is one of the largest opportunities for gaining improved speeds on mobile sites and even on desktop sites. On our end, we should try to limit as many requests as possible to the server. And there's a couple of areas that we can look to focus on within this framework. When we're talking about limiting the number of HTTP requests, what we typically recommend is to aim for under 40 requests. The reason why is we want to reduce the amount of materials that we are sending back and forth between the server. Each time we send a request, we're looking for that call to come back to your site. If there's too many requests occurring, it will mean that your website will lag for the user when they're looking at you either in their mobile or tablet environment. In order to minimize those HTTP requests, a couple of things you can do. First, try to merge some types of files. Use inline small JavaScript and remove duplicate requests. This has a significant impact in the amount of requests that we're making to the server, particularly inline in the small JavaScript. Another easy win for us is to leverage browser caching. So there's a number of files that are eligible for caching on that user's browser. Items such as style sheets, JavaScript files, web fonts, and static resources can be cached on that user's browsers. Other files unfortunately can't be cached, such as dynamic information, users information, and changing data. So for instance, if you have JavaScript on your website that updates data for the user, whether that's weather, prices of commodities, these type of things can't be cached on the user's browser, as we won't be able to update them accordingly. When you're on HTTP1 or HTTPS, you need to make sure to leverage browser caching in order to reduce page load times by storing those commonly used files from your site on your visitor's browser. By utilizing the visitor's browser to the website, you can significantly decrease the load speed that user has to sit through, as larger files take longer to load and can be especially painful if that user is on a slower internet connection. Browser caching can be the user's device, and that means not only will your website load much quicker, the user will have a much better experience, particularly in the usage of their own data on their data plan if they're on the go. Another area that we should look at is minification. So what we want to try and do is minify all assets, whether that be HTML, CSS, or even JavaScript. This is important to minify all these assets during server-side pre-processing and with content-specific user agent detection optimization. The best way to go about that is by using a protocol called gzip. gzip is a generic compressor that can be applied to any stream of bytes. Typically, it does work best on text-based content and often can achieve compression rates of up to 70 to 90% on these large. However, it does also work on image files and will have a significant impact on the load speeds as well. All modern browsers support and automatically fire off gzip compressions for all HTTP requests. And enabling gzip can reduce the size of the transferred responses, which again will reduce the amount of time to download the resources. When we're talking about minifying, it's important to strip out comments and remove any extra white space that may be in your HTML or CSS. Another area that we should look at when we're looking at our code is how we can check and fix HTML markup errors. When we're reviewing the code from an MWeb perspective, it makes things easier for the dev team if we use W3C Unicorn, which will automatically review the HTML files and check for any errors. While this won't have a direct impact on your page speed, we do suggest it as best practice, and we find that it makes it easier for dev teams to identify areas for improvement within the scripts. So, in regards to MWeb, there's a number of different tools that we have available externally for our publishers and for our advertisers to improve their mobile experience. There's about 6 main tools that we would recommend you review. Page speed insights, the web page tests, utilizing the Chrome developer tools, the W3C, using your own data to identify users' behavior on the site using Google Analytics, and also Google Cloud Log Viewer. At the end of this stream, we'll send you across this deck and the details about these different resources available to us. In regards to the resources themselves, they vary in terms of complexity, the precision, and how scalable they are. The first port of call when we're reviewing our mobile website, as mentioned before, is to utilize Page Speed Insights. Page Speed Insights will give you a very quick review of your mobile website, both from a loading perspective, but also from a UX perspective. It will also give you information on whether your site is benefiting from the ranking signal within Google search. Similar to the web page test, this is a very quick way to examine how quickly your page is loading. In terms of complexity, these tools are quite easy to use. They're plug and play. Essentially, you grab the URL of the page that you want to test, insert it onto these websites, and they will generate results for you. The benefits of these is just it's simple to use UI. In terms of the precision, this is where it gets quite interesting. So, particularly for page speeds, it's making a large number of assumptions, and it also doesn't have an understanding of the strategy that you've utilized from a development perspective. There's some reasons why you might be utilizing certain features within JavaScript that it won't be able to pick up on. And also, it's not very scalable simply because you have to utilize the UI. If you feel that the results from page speed or web page tests don't give you a full picture of how your site is performing, what we recommend is for you to use the Chrome extension within Chrome development tools. This is quite a nifty tool that we have available to developers and publishers. It gives you a much more detailed understanding of where we need to optimize from a web perspective, and it will focus in on particular pages and the page source information that's available to it. I suppose the main difficulty with the Chrome Developer tool is it's really focused on a page-by-page perspective. So while you do get a high level of precision, scalability becomes an issue. In regards to the more complex tools, the areas that we would point towards are Google Analytics and the Google Cloud Log Reader. In terms of Google Analytics, this is going to be vitally important to understand the journey of your user on your website. And we'd strongly recommend for you to segment based on mobile users and see how you're performing. Often when we look at Google Analytics, it's doing it on aggregate. So we're looking at visitors to your website from both desktop, mobile and tablet. Typically what we find with desktop, due to its maturity, page speeds are not an issue. We also find that we have a strong returning base of users who would have joined and initially came to your website in a desktop world. We're no longer living in a desktop world, and we're no longer living in just a mobile first world. In many cases, we're living in a mobile only world. So the first point of contact that your user or your visitor or your reader will have off your website will be through mobile. By drilling down into the mobile data, we'll be able to get a greater understanding of the user's behavior on your site. This will be particularly interesting for you when you consider first-time visitors to your website, their bounce rate, the time they've spent on your website, and also for returning users, the number of page views that they have on the site and the time spent on the site. With Google Analytics, it does become quite technical, and it requires a bit of time to deep dive into the data available to you there. We would suggest that you start looking at this data as a way to not just optimize the M-site performance in terms of the UX and also the page speed, but also optimizing towards the ad delivery to those users as well. Potentially there's ways to split out your revenue streams, focusing on new users who may benefit from less ads and returning users who understand how content is delivered to them, and tailoring the information that you have to create a greater user experience in terms of the ad text and ad relevancy. When we're looking at these different tools, the easiest ones to use are the page speed insights and also the speed index. When we're looking at this on the page speed insights, it's judged on a percentage rating. So when we look at page speeds, we're really trying to aim for a goal of 85%. Now, I would caveat this by saying 85% is typically for e-commerce websites who are looking to have as seamless a user experience as possible and tend to not utilize that many different tags due to the fact that they often don't have as much ad technology logged onto their website. For publishers, our goal would aim towards around 65 to 70. For the speed index, we're looking to get lower than 1,000. But again, from my experience, if we can get lower than 4,000 to 5,000, we're in this very strong position from an M-speed perspective. When we're looking at these areas as well, the two things to call out is just how a user experiences your website. So when we talk about a user's experience on the website, we want to think about first their perception and then what's actually happening on the site itself. So visually complete means that from a user's perspective, everything has loaded up onto their M page. It's all the information that they need in order to engage with your site. When we talk about fully loaded, this is where we start to load up below the fold. All those different widgets that we're looking to load and hold back when we're having those initial conversations with our users load at this point. So when we look at the visually completed and the fully loaded, basically this is the difference between the user and the website itself. So when we talk about mobile speed, the two main areas that we were focusing on was time spent on site, conversion rate and bounce rate. But what we've noticed is with the growing demand on mobile devices, a lot of our larger publishers and smaller publishers alike are having great success by focusing on that mobile user and ensuring that they're having the best experience possible. GQ, for example, prioritized mobile in 2015. Working with their dev teams, they'd increased the page load times by up to 80%, bringing it down to that almost perfect score of 2 seconds. To further facilitate that, they reduced the calls to their servers by 400%, utilising some of the suggestions that we had earlier on in the presentation. By doing this, they obviously had a great impact on the user experience, but also on the discoverability. Due to the ranking signals that we have in Google, they benefited by an 83% increase in traffic from search. They also noticed that their users increased the time spent on the website by up to 32%, and the interaction rate on ads increased by 108%. Another one of our publishers based in the US again focused on how they could make the mobile experience as optimal as possible to their users. They focused by decreasing the load page speeds by 35%. And what they found was they were able to increase the revenue that they were making per user by up to 70%. With mobile, we've been talking about it for the last couple of years. First of all, it's the idea that people were moving to mobile. The second stage was that we're living in a mobile first world. We're now, in many ways, in a mobile only world. There's no new net users to desktop. At the moment, it is the most mature revenue stream that we have in our stack, but growth is going to come from mobile. And in addition, our new users are going to come on mobile. If our users don't have an optimal experience on our sites, we know that they'll turn away from us. The first thing we should be prioritizing is to ensure that those speeds on those websites are as fast as possible. That we're creating the perfect mobile experience for our user, and that ecosystem that exists between the user, publisher, and advertiser is as healthy as possible in this mobile-only world. So guys, this was the first of our live streams related to mobile. We wanted to focus on what we believe is one of the most important aspects of mobile, which is page speeds and user experience. So we'd like to thank you for joining us today. We'll of course send out more details about this. What we would ask you to do is, if you have any other questions about MSpeed or any questions about the content that rose today, please do reach out to your account managers and we can have a conversation about it on a one-to-one basis.
Yeah. Also, just to clarify, if you guys would like to have a copy of the deck that we just presented today, please do get in touch with your account manager and we will have the deck sent over to you. Once again, thanks a ton for joining in, and we will keep you posted, and we hope to do this a lot more often, where we could catch your time in the afternoons to give you some insights about mobile and other interesting topics that we're working on. Thanks a ton, and have a good day. Cheers.
Thanks a lot, guys.